It is a really exciting day as I get to introduce a new car we have added to the family. And I know my name on here is Jalopy Jockey, and this is absolutely no jalopy. Look at this. 1957 Continental Mark II. When this model came out in 1956, it was the most expensive American car you could buy. Incredible that I got it. I'm going to show you the car, tell you a little bit about the history, where it's at right now, because this is not ready to go. And it certainly wasn't ready to go when I got it. Talk about what it might need and where we're going from here. But yeah, still, incredible car. Always wanted one of these. It was super lucky. I got this one at a Bonham's auction out of LA, and I couldn't afford it. Even though I got a great deal on this thing. Paid about $20,000 for it. I asked my wife, pretty pleased, because she owns actually the business we're at right here, and she said, you know what, I will get you that for your birthday. Can you believe it? How lucky is that? By far the nicest car I have bought in the condition that I got it. I've actually been pretty quiet on this channel. The Mercury I have, the 1964 Mercury convertible, is getting repainted right now. And here's the status of that car. Some major body work going on. They cut out the rear quarter panels, rockers. I started doing body work on this car and determined that, you know, discretion is the better part of valor. It was over my head, seeing how much damage there actually was to this thing. So took it to some professionals. It's at a place called WD Fabrication in Sacramento. They're doing an amazing job with it, and they're gonna complete the paint job and I'll get it back. That one has a completely rebuilt 390 overdrive transmission with a 4R70W adapter to that FE. So that car is gonna be amazing. When that car is done, you know, I think it's actually going to be a bit nicer than this one is right now, but both are going to be way nicer than anything I've ever had. But I'm going to enjoy the journey with both of them, because they weren't, at least the Mercury wasn't that nice when I got it, and this one is going to be in better hands with me. So like all Continental Mark IIs, this has a 368 cubic inch Lincoln V8. Now if this was 1956, I think it would have about 280 horsepower, 285 maybe. 57, that got a bump. Solid lifter cam, higher compression, 300 horsepower, 415 pound-feet of torque. Pretty good engine. I mean, these Y blocks came out with 160 horsepower or something, maybe even way less than that. Not powerhouses. They got it right by the time they got up to this one. This one doesn't have all of it. Some of it is missing somewhere. You start going up a hill and it starts slowing down. So we got to look at, it might be the secondary diaphragm on the vacuum secondary carburetor not opening. Could be the timing. That's my first bet. This does have a vacuum diaphragm. I'm guessing that thing is seized up, or the mechanical advance isn't working the way it's supposed to. Haven't even got into that yet to find out where those really missing torques are. At a 415, it'll move this car up a hill. So what it does have, again, I got this car at an auction, and immediately, I don't live near LA. I live about 8 hours from there, 7 maybe. Had it towed over to a shop, because my plan was to go down there, get it, and drive it back. That didn't happen because there was a delay in the title. Getting the title to me from the Prince of Kuwait. Next story. Anyway, the shop, they put in a new water pump, new fuel pump, new thermostat, new booster and master cylinder, and then I've put in that battery that matches the car. The original Type 32N battery for this thing. So with all that, still didn't know what the condition of the engine would be. But it starts, runs, idle, low load, really runs great. It's just that when you start putting the load on, it's not all there. Also the heat and AC don't work. This is an AC car. You may see we have a compressor over here. That was the only option available on these things, was air conditioning. This has it. That also means it has 4 blower motors. 2 for the heat, 1 on each side, and in the back by the AC there's 2 more. It's insane, and none of them are working right now. Could be the switch, fuse, relay, all those things. I'm not sure. Again, we gotta figure that out. Here's the other big ticket item I've already put into this car. These are Diamondback Classics Auburn Deluxe tires on new Wheel of Antiques 15x6 steel wheels. Now, when you put a radial, this is actually a radial tire. It looks like an old bias ply with that pie crust, which I really like the way that pie crust just seems to be an extension of that wheel cover. Turned out awesome on this car, and that white wall that this car really needs. Super cool, new radial tires from Diamondback Classic. Again, new steel wheels, keep that hubcap secure on there. It was actually a little insecure, but pop that back on there. Take a look at a few of the cool features you can see from the back of the car. First, to start out with, to get to the trunk lock, gotta move the little Continental soldier here out of the way. And see that spare tire that gives us that bump in the trunk lid. Then if you look back here at the back of the trunk, you can see a sight glass for the air conditioner. All the air conditioning stuff is up under there. Then a few of the other cool things that were back here. You have a box of belts, a hammer, lug wrench, a few old road flares. Always fun what you find in a car like this, but these might be some of the coolest old things I found. And then a whole box of old documentation here. Now this goes back to the original owner and then the second owner, up into the 80s. Gotta show this, especially if you're not familiar with these cars. This is the driver's side taillight. It's got a little thing you hold on to, and that's the gas cap. God, I love that feature on old cars where they would hide the gas cap in cool places like that, and this has to be one of the best. So about that prior ownership, this car was originally purchased by David and Fritzie Huntington in California. Now, that Huntington name, that was one of the wealthiest Californians. Well, really his grandpa was. He was the Huntington that Huntington Beach was named after, and owned a bunch of stuff around California. So his grandson, David, he was an author, wrote a couple books. Don't know what else he did. Actually bought his book, Tahitian Holiday, just to have a copy, because now I have his car, his old used car. So it went from there to Atlantic Air Supply Company, staying in California. Then it was owned by the Peterson Museum, big famous museum in LA, great collection. Resided there until it was sold at auction through Barrett Jackson, and went through a few different owners, including dealers, until it actually found its way to Kuwait. In fact, the Sheikh of Kuwait, or one of them anyway. I'm not going to butcher his name, but that's who this car was titled to before me. Title obviously all in Arabic. So I sent it to a coworker of mine, conveniently speaks Arabic, and he translated it. He's like, oh my God, Cody, this is a sheikh, a prince, owned this car. And when we found out which prince, looking him up, it wasn't just any, he was Prime Minister of Kuwait until I believe 2011. And he was actually selling 4 of these, as far as I could find out. 2 in England and 2 in the United States. One was nicer than this one, and then I'd say the other 2 probably not quite as nice as this one. This one was right in between. Still think I got an awesome deal on it. Love the story behind it. Those original owners, David and Fritzie Huntington, have an environmental education center with their name on it in Lake Tahoe. Would love if I could find maybe some descendants, other people in that family. Maybe they have pictures of the Huntington family in this car. It'd be really cool to bring that history together. And then that Middle Eastern history. You could consider calling this car Jasmine. She went from Middle Eastern royalty to a common street rat like me. And I'm the one taking care of her now. The only thing I really want to work on is making sure everything works. Some of the window switches work, some are intermittent. Like I said, the blower, the AC, those don't work. Got a tail light out. The tach drive seems to be making some weird clattering noises when I'm driving. So little things I can keep improving to just make this a better driver. That's all I hope to do. Now, I gotta get back home. Why don't you come for a drive? All right, getting a little dark. Headlights do work, but I know one tail light's out, so we better get home. Start it up. Gotta go to neutral. Forget about that. Starts. Idle's great. Tach works. Speedometer works. All the gauges work. Well, the clock doesn't work, but I don't care about the clock. It's right twice a day. That old joke. Radio doesn't work. The cool little controls down here for the vents, those work, but the blower, AC, heat, none of those switches really do anything. But fairly decent. You do, I mean, really cool. You have the vents up here for the AC. This is where the AC would come out of from those other two blower motors. One way to identify if the car has AC or not. Some people think it would have to have a vent on the back quarter to have AC. And the early cars did. I think almost all the 56s did, till maybe towards the end. 57s, they got rid of that. It's just taking on a lot of water, and they pull the fresh air from the front all the way through the rockers to the back. All right, down into drive. Ooh, that nice 550 RPM idle that these big old engines can have. There's nothing quite like it. Better get those headlights on. Just that massive hood out front. You can't quite see it. What an experience to drive a car like this. I was absolutely stunned by how well this thing drove. Oh, by the way, the shop did replace not just the master cylinder and booster, but all the brake hoses and the wheel cylinders, which I recommend to anybody buying an old car like this. You got to do that because they're going to be full of rust and you aren't going to stop every time. Well, you'll stop every time until the last time. That last time, you're not going to stop, and that's a bad day. All that's changed. It just feels so solid and goes over bumps just like a luxury car, an old luxury car like this should. But really with a quality I haven't really noticed until you get into the 70s. Now, I know there's a lot of bad things about those 70s cars, but those big luxury 70s cars, man, they drive great. And this actually drives just like that. Steering, I mean, well, a bit loose like any of these old cars were. Very, very solid. Way better than my Galaxy or Mercury were. And those were 5-7 years newer than this car. The chassis just feels so rigid. And the suspension, it doesn't feel as floaty as you might think. It's actually pretty taut comparatively. Really well dampened. Can't say enough for how well this thing actually runs and drives. Apart from when you try to go up a hill. That can be a problem. It'll get there, but it's slowing down the whole way. But this is what I'm really looking forward to enjoying with this car. Just putting some miles on it. Put my kid in the back, put my wife in the passenger seat. Let's go get some groceries, get some ice cream, take it to Cars and Coffee in the morning, grab a donut. Just a fantastic experience all around. And use it for pictures. Gotta use something like this for pictures. She might get called Cruella. I don't know. Maybe she doesn't need a name at all. Continental, Mark II. They give it some pretty good names already, didn't they? So with something this nice, can I still be a jalopy jockey? And I say yes. Because one, well, the shift handle knob is broken off. I mean, it's still my kind of car. Even if it's really about the nicest version of my kind of car. It's got a full complete headliner that's in great shape. Never had that before. But really, this car proved that I was still a jalopy jockey. I had it for about maybe 14 miles, I would guess, before we were going to a trunk or treat for my wife's business, where we give out candy from the trunks of cars. It's a bad idea if it's one guy, but if it's a bunch of people together, I guess it's fine. So, first miles I'd ever put on the car. Got it to DMV, got it registered, drove right from there to trunk or treat, and it got to the parking spot of Trunk or Treat, and that's where it died. The shop that was working on it had the lower radiator hose, when they put it back on, too close to the power steering pump belt. The belt cut through the hose, and I sprayed out all sorts of coolant on the parking lot of the Trunk or Treat, which is just the kind of thing I would do. Then, as it's sitting there, dripping out all its coolant, a tire went flat. One of my brand new Diamondback Classic tires. Those things are expensive, and I had just put them on. But find out the shop that put them on had put tubes inside the new radial tires. Now, when these were new, they even came with tubeless tires in 1957. So to put on new radials with tubes in them, that was the problem. One tire went flat, and that's where I went out for the Wheel Vintiques Series 62 steel wheels that'll keep those hubcaps on. They won't flex as much with that radial tire on there. And Diamondback actually sent me a replacement tire because when it went flat, one of the white walls got a big sag in it. I'd only had them for a couple days, so pretty cool of them to send me a replacement. Now all of them just look perfect. So the good part will be coming up next. That's when we pull out some of the tools, see maybe what's going on with this thing, see if it is that secondary in the carburetor, maybe see if it's timing, and see if we can get a little more of the power back out of this Continental. So stay tuned, and that will be coming up next on this. It's a bit hot yet.